Hey there, Mustangs. We are going to be going over the anatomy of the muscular system today. So get out your anatomy sheet for the muscles. We are learning some of the muscles of the face and the torso. There are definitely a lot of muscles that I leave off just because this is an entry-level anatomy class, so we're doing kind of some of the basics. But follow along. I'm going to go through kind of the muscles of the head and the face first, and then we'll switch to going over the muscles of the torso. So here we have the face. The first one on our anatomy sheet is what's called the frontalis muscle. So the frontalis muscle sits on top of the frontal bone, and easy as that. It actually does extend all the way onto this side. It's just this side shows what would be underneath with the skull. So frontalis muscle here, that's what allows for you to raise your eyebrows. And then the temporalis muscle sits on top of the temporal bone. So temporalis on top of the temporal bone. This is a muscle that actually, if you were to rest your hand right there and lock your jaw, you would feel that muscle protrude because it's shortening and it's allowing for you to close and lock your jaw. So we had frontalis, temporalis. Next one on the list is the occipitalis. And the occipitalis is not very well pictured here. We can see a little bit of it. The occipitalis would run along the occipital bone and up. Okay. Next, we have what are called the orbicularis muscles. We have two of them that we're going to learn in the face. So an orbicularis muscle is it's like a sphincter muscle that when it contracts, it closes. So the first one is around the eye. So we can see around this guy's eye, this circular muscle going around it. That's called the orbicularis oculi. And then around his mouth is what's called the orbicularis oris. So there's orbicularis oculi around the eye and orbicularis oris around the mouth. We think about what those do. Orbicularis oculi, if it's closing, it's going to allow for you to close your eyes or wink. And if orbicularis oris is closing, it's going to allow for you to make a kissy face, right? Pucker your lips. Okay, next we have a muscle that allows for you to smile. So if we think when we smile, we want the edge of our mouth, the corner of our mouth, to be lifted up toward our cheekbone. So if you remember what your cheekbone's called, your zygomatic bone, the name of this muscle, it actually goes right here, is pretty easy to remember. It's the zygomaticus. So this one, it actually splits into two different sections. We're just learning it as zygomaticus period. So the one that goes from the side of the mouth up toward the zygomatic bone, zygomaticus. Next is a muscle, continuing with the cheek. It's a really thick muscle of your cheek known as the masseter. So the masseter muscle hangs out kind of at the back of your mandible. And this is really the primary muscle of what's called mastication, which is the term for chewing. So this allows for you to lock your jaw. You can feel the masseter definitely contracting when you do close your jaw. So that's the masseter. And then in here is what's called the buccinator. We can also see it here on this image as well, the buccinator. So what does this one do? This allows for you to make a fishy face. So it's going to allow for you to suck the lips in or the cheeks in even more. That's the buccinator. Okay, so I have covered all of the muscles of the face. Now let's talk about muscles of the neck. So I do not have a model in my classroom that has the most superficial muscle on it that's called the platysma. The platysma is what sits, it's a very broad, flat muscle that sits over the top of the rest of your neck muscles. And when it contracts, it draws the edges of your mouth down and it comes out kind of like bat wings. And I always like to say that if you really exaggerate the word platysma, your platysma will come out when you say that word. So your platysma. Again, I don't have a model of that in my classroom though. However, I do have this model here. So we can look kind of up close to the top of the model and all the way at the back of his head, which I know is close to the top of the frame. We have the mastoid process, remember? So the mastoid process is right behind your ear on the skull bone, on the temporal bone of the skull. And the sternocleidomastoid muscle has two heads and attaches to the sternum, the clavicle, and goes all the way up to attach to the back of the skull, to the mastoid process. So sternocleidomastoid. That's what's shown on this specific model on Arnold on both the right and the left side. Okay. So those are muscles of the neck that we're going to learn, at least from the front. Now let's talk about the chest and the abdomen. So The chest muscles, we can see on Arnold, he has like more of the superficial muscles on this side, and he has more of the deep muscles on this side because something's been cut off. So on this side over here, this is what's called the pectoralis major. So pectoralis major makes up the entire, it's a giant muscle, makes up the whole kind of front and upper portion of the thorax, really covers most of those ribs, going all the way and attaching to the shoulder. Okay, the pec muscle, if you think about what it does, when it contracts, it allows for us to adduct, and it also allows for us to flex the shoulder. That's why something like a bench press or a push-up is going to work the pec muscles. If we remove the pectoralis major, we cut it off, like we can see they did on this model right here, what's underneath it is the pectoralis minor, which is also a pec muscle that does a lot of the same work that the pectoralis major does. A couple of differences there just because of where it's going to actually attach to the bone, but I digress. So pectoralis minor, okay? Okay, a couple more that are on the list that really I don't have a good model of are what are called the internal and external intercostals. Your intercostal muscles sit in between the ribs. So if I was asking you for the intercostal muscles, they're the ones that sit in between the ribs. Okay, going down to the diaphragm. The diaphragm is also one that we can't see on this model because I would have to take all the stuff off. The diaphragm sits at the base of your rib cage, and it is a dome-shaped muscle. But the serratus anterior, the next one on your list, we definitely can see. So I'm going to tip him this way a little bit. And you can see these very serrated ends of the muscle that are kind of attaching to the ribs. That's called the serratus anterior. So it's called serratus because it looks like a serrated blade or shark teeth. And it comes and attaches to the ribs and actually goes out and attaches to the under part of the scapula. So serratus anterior, we can see it on this side, and we can see it on this side too. And this side, since it is a little more realistic because we have all of these other muscles of the abdomen that we'll get to in a second, and the serratus anterior comes in and is kind of tucked in between those muscles. So that's the serratus anterior. Okay, now we're getting down into the muscles of the abdomen. So your abdomen has an entire, what we call abdominal girdle to it. So this is both the front muscles, but also the backside muscles. Think of it like your body is wearing like a corset, and you are very stabilized, or you should be very stabilized by all of these layers of muscle. A lot of people, when they think abs, they just think six-pack abs, and they don't think about all of the abdominals and all of the other muscles that are actually layered to allow for you to maintain core stability. So let's talk through a few of those muscles. Since we said six-pack, let's talk about the six-pack muscle first. That's called the rectus abdominis. So the word rectus means straight up and down. Abdominis means the abdomen. So this is this muscle here. And there would be one on both sides, the right and the left. But on this side, we can see this sheath is actually over top of the abdominal muscles, kind of keeping them all contained together. But if we removed that, we would see the rectus abdominis muscle. In between the right and the left rectus abdominis muscle, there is a line, a white line that separates the two that's called the linea alba. Okay, and you can see your belly button is kind of housed there as your first scar that you ever made, most likely. So rectus abdominis, and then the rectus abdominis muscle is right in the center, and then the lateral part of our abdomen made out of the external obliques. So the obliques kind of go at an angle, and the external obliques go up and out. So we had rectus abdominis, external obliques, and then the internal obliques are layered underneath that. So if we remove those, we would see the internal obliques going this way. And if we removed even more, we would see transverse abdominis going that way, but I don't have this on this model. Okay, so those are the abdominal muscles. We will skip iliopsoas. I know it's on your list. I'll go over that when we do the legs because we can see that a little bit better when we look on the inside of the hip. All right, now we can do the muscles of the back. So again, we're learning some, not all of these muscles, but we're gonna start with, we're gonna come all the way up here, the base of his skull, and we're gonna come down, trace the spine down and up onto the spine of the scapula. That is a muscle called the trapezius. So the trapezius muscle is kind of shaped like a trapezoid, I suppose, and it is broken into 3 sections. So there are fibers up here that are going up. So this is the upper trapezius, In the middle here is the middle trapezius, and then down here is the lower trapezius. The trapezius muscle is really responsible for, at the upper portion, it's responsible for that shoulder shrug, like being able to shrug your shoulders. But the middle trapezius is a postural muscle, helps with posture, and the lower trapezius also is a postural muscle, and it allows us to also lift our arms up over our head. A lot of people have weak trapezius muscles. It's like it's a muscle that's really hard to target if you're not working back muscles in the gym. And so this lower trapezius muscle and the middle trapezius muscle can oftentimes be a reason that we're so stuck in like a forward posture instead of thinking, okay, I need to pull my shoulders up and back, and I need to make sure that I have an upward posture to take care of myself. Okay, upper trapezius, middle trapezius, lower trapezius. This one down here, since I'm down here, this giant muscle that goes all the way down the back and up toward the armpit, that's called the latissimus dorsi. So upper trapezius, middle trapezius, lower trapezius, latissimus dorsi. You'll also hear dorsi, latissimus dorsi, potato, potato. If we take the upper trapezius off from here, we reveal what's underneath. So this side shows underneath. These are what are called the rhomboids. So the rhomboid muscles. We have a rhomboid major and a rhomboid minor. The minor is just a little guy on top. The major is the bigger guy. Okay. A couple more. Let's see. We have one more on here. And that's known as the levator scapula. Come here. I'll show you the levator scapula. So we can see his shoulder blade right here. Okay, we had his rhomboids, and then right here, going up toward his neck, is the levator scapula. So it actually attaches to the scapula and is going to go upward, elevating the scapula. And stay tuned for muscles of the upper extremity.